They once asked Carl Jung, "Do you believe in God?" He didn't flinch. He didn't preach. He didn't even blink. He said, "I don't believe. I know." Think about that for a second. How do you reach a place in your soul where you don't just believe in something greater? You know it. How many of us spend our entire lives trapped in the question, does God exist? Some find answers in churches, temples, sacred texts. Others reject the question altogether. But for Jung, the idea of God was never just about religion. It was about the reality that your soul knows more than your mind can ever explain. He didn't think of God as an old man in the clouds, but as a symbol. The ultimate archetype that lives deep in the unconscious, a force so ancient and so alive that we dream about it, fear it, run from it, and yet, in our darkest nights, we long for it. A moment when logic fails. When life is too big to be random, too connected to be meaningless. Jung believed that these moments are when you brush up against what he called the numinous, the powerful, mysterious presence that pulls you out of your small ego and makes you feel part of something vast. When people came to him, lost, anxious, or spiritually empty, he didn't give them easy answers. He invited them to meet the God they carried inside. He asked them to listen to their dreams, confront their shadows, and pay attention to the symbols that showed up again and again. The symbols that speak a language older than words. Have you ever had a dream that felt more real than your waking life? A sign that felt too perfect to be coincidence? Jung would say, that's your soul knocking on your door, trying to remind you that the divine is not out there. It's here. In you, around you. Beneath everything you think you know. We live in a world that loves certainty. Facts, proofs, scientific evidence. But there are things you can't measure with a microscope. And for Jung, God was like that. Not an object you find, but an experience you live. He once said, the religious attitude is the greatest protection against psychic infection. What did he mean? That when you have a connection to something bigger than your small daily dramas, you have an anchor for your soul. You have a way to make sense of your suffering, your questions, your journey. And yet, the biggest tragedy is that most people never dare to go deeper. They believe what they're told, or they reject everything, but they never look inside. They never ask, what does God mean to me? Where do I feel the divine in my own life? So I'm asking you now, what do you believe? Or maybe the real question is, what do you know? If this is already making you think, don't let it stop here. Hit subscribe right now, because this journey is just beginning. And share this with someone whose soul is ready to wake up to something bigger. And take a moment, write this question down. If I could see God not as a rule, but as an experience, what would that look like in my life? Jung believed the answers you find on your own change you more than any belief you rehanded. Remember, the divine is not always loud. Sometimes it whispers in your dreams. Sometimes it hides in your fears. Sometimes it waits for you in your greatest heartbreak. Maybe your real work isn't to keep searching for proof that God exists, but to pay attention to the places in your life where your soul is already trying to tell you, I don't believe, I know. Stay with me, because in part 2 we're going deeper into dreams, shadows, symbols, and why Jung believed you'll never truly know God until you know yourself. Carl Jung spent decades listening to people's dreams. He believed dreams weren't just random stories. They were the voice of the soul, trying to speak to the conscious mind in a language older than words. He called this hidden reservoir the unconscious, and at its deepest layer, the collective unconscious. The place where every symbol, every myth, every idea of God humanity ever had, still lives. When Jung said, I don't believe, I know, he didn't mean he had proof you could measure. He meant he had seen, again and again, how people's souls long for the divine. How they dream of it, fear it, run from it, and find it again in the darkest corners of their psyche. Have you ever had a dream that shook you awake? Maybe it didn't make sense, but something about it stayed with you all day. Maybe you dreamed of a powerful animal, a stranger with a message, or a light so bright you couldn't describe it. Jung would say, pay attention, because these images are clues. The soul speaks in symbols, and God is the greatest symbol of all. In one famous dream, a patient came to Jung, troubled by her lack of faith. She told him she'd dreamed of a scarab beetle, an ancient symbol of rebirth. Moments later, in the middle of their session, a real scarab beetle tapped on the window. For Jung, this wasn't a trick. It was synchronicity, meaningful coincidence, a bridge between the outer world and the soul. It was life whispering. Something bigger is at work here. Wake up. Do you notice these signs in your own life? A number that repeats. A song that plays at the exact moment you need to hear it. A stranger's words that answer a question you never spoke out loud. When you're tuned out, these things feel random. But when you open your inner eyes, they feel like the universe leaning in, saying, "See, you're not alone." Jung believed that people who are disconnected from the symbolic are disconnected from their soul. And when you lose your soul, you feel hollow. You might look successful on the outside, but inside, you're starving for meaning. That's why so many people come to spirituality when life breaks them open. When loss, illness, or crisis shatters their illusions. In that raw place, they find what they'd been ignoring all along. The divine is not somewhere far away. It lives inside the cracks. If you want to understand how Jung's idea of God works, you have to see the paradox. He didn't care if you followed a certain religion. He cared that you made your beliefs real inside you, that you wrestled with your doubts, that you didn't just repeat what you were told, but found what the divine meant to you. So let me ask you, do you see the symbols in your own life? Or do you dismiss them because they don't fit your logic? What if the question isn't, does God exist? But how does the divine speak to me? If this is opening your mind, pause right now and subscribe. Because this is what we do here. We learn to see what the eyes alone can see. And share this with a friend who has always felt there is more between the lines of life. Jung said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." That is why he spent so much time exploring the shadow. The parts of us we deny. He knew that, until you face what hides in the dark, you'll never know what wants to shine in the light. Some people spend their entire lives looking for God in someone else's words. But what if your biggest encounter with the divine has always been waiting inside you? Not in a perfect church or a sacred book, but in the symbols that follow you, the dreams that haunt you, the coincidences that refuse to leave you alone. If you've ever felt like your soul is trying to tell you something, listen, write it down, sit with it, let your inner world be just as real as the outer one. That's how you start to live with the same quiet confidence Jung had, but you, Dante, need to argue about whether God exists. You just need to know. And maybe that's the greatest test of your spiritual intelligence. Can you hold the mystery? Can you trust that what you can explain might be the most real thing you ever feel? Because when you do, you stop feeling so small. You stop trying to force answers that can't be forced. You start seeing meaning everywhere. In the mundane, the painful, the beautiful. And you begin to see that you too are a symbol. If any part of this makes your soul whisper yes, don't let it fade. Subscribe right now. Comment below with the symbols that keep showing up in your life, and keep asking questions. Because the more you listen, the more the world speaks back. It's easy to talk about God when life is comfortable. When you're winning. When you're loved. When nothing hurts too deeply. But Carl Jung knew that's not where real faith is born. He once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." In other words, the divine is not found by escaping your shadow, but by walking straight into it. Ask yourself, what parts of me do I refuse to see? The anger you bury, the envy you deny, the fear you hide under perfectionism. Jung called this the shadow, the dark side of your personality you pretend isn't there. But ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. It makes it stronger. It leaks out in your relationships, your addictions, your For Jung, your shadow is not evil. It's energy. Untapped, raw. It's the wolf you keep chained in the basement, because you're afraid it will eat you alive. But what if you fed that wolf truth instead of fear? What if you listened to what it wants to teach you? Many people run from their darkness because they think it means they're bad, broken, unworthy of love. But Jung believed the opposite. Your wholeness depends on your courage to face what you rather keep hidden. Because in that darkness, you find the keys to real freedom. In that darkness, you discover your power and your connection to something bigger than yourself. Have you ever wondered why the same conflicts show up again and again in your life? The same arguments, the same heartbreak, the same self-destructive thoughts. That's your shadow, begging to be seen, heard, and healed. Until you do, you're stuck in loops that feel like fate, but they really just the unconscious mind, calling you back to the work you keep avoiding. Now imagine this. What if your deepest connection to God isn't about ignoring your flaws, but loving yourself enough to bring them into the light? Jung knew that people who pretend to be all good often become rigid, judgmental, cut off from their own humanity. But people who face their shadow become humble. They see they see them in others, too. And from that place, they feel a deep compassion. The kind that makes room for a real relationship with the divine. Have you ever felt closer to something greater in your worst moments than in your best? That's not an accident. Crisis cracks your ego open. When life breaks you, your masks fall off. And in that raw, honest place, you can finally feel what your soul has been longing for. Not answers, but connection. Jung believed that when people stop believing in God like a child believes in fairy tales, and start knowing God like you know the sun warms your skin. It's not blind faith. It's direct experience. It's the inner voice that says, I'm not alone. I'm not abandoned. Even in my darkest hour, something greater walks beside me and within me. And here's what makes it even more powerful. Once you meet your shadow, you stop projecting it onto the world. You don't need an enemy for your darkness anymore. Because you own it. You become less likely to judge, blame, or create chaos to avoid your own discomfort. You become rooted in yourself and in the mystery. If this is resonating with you right now, pause and share this video with someone who's ready to do this inner work too. Subscribe if you haven't yet, because the journey doesn't end here. Ask yourself today, what part of me do I still run from? Where does my shadow show up in my life? Write it down. Sit with it. Not to shame yourself, but to free yourself. Because Jung's greatest gift to us is this truth. You can know real light until you know real darkness. You can't feel whole if you keep rejecting parts of your own soul. And you can't truly know the divine if you won't meet the wild, uncomfortable places inside you. The next time you feel that old fear, that old shame, that old anger, pause, breathe, thank it for trying to protect you. Then remind yourself, this is part of me, but it's not all of me. That's how you reclaim your power. That's how you make the unconscious That's how you move from blind belief to quiet, unshakable knowing. Stay with me. Because in the final part, we're tying it all together. How your dreams, your shadows, your symbols, and your daily life can become your personal cathedral. And don't forget a comment. Where in your life have you seen your shadow become a doorway to your deepest strength? Imagine for a moment that your life is a sacred text, a living book, written line by line in your dreams, your relationships, your fears, and your quiet moments of all. Carl Jung believed that if you truly want to experience God, you don't have to chase a sign in the sky. You don't have to wait for miracles outside of you. You have to become a student of your own soul. He once said, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. And that's where real faith lives. Not in the words we repeat, but in the courage to sit in silence and listen to what our soul is really saying. When you start paying attention to the symbols that show up for you, the dreams that feel more vivid than real life, the repeating numbers, the chance encounters, you realize life is always trying to wake you up. This is what Jung called synchronicity. Meaningful coincidences that bridge your inner world and the outer world. Tiny threads that whisper you're not alone. This isn't random. Keep going. Have you ever experienced this? A thought you couldn't shake. And then a stranger says exactly what you needed to hear. Or you feel lost, and a book falls into your hands with the exact words your heart was craving. To Jung, these were not accidents. They were the language of the soul. They were the divine reaching for you in the middle of ordinary life. But here is the truth so many people miss. You can hear that language if you read drowning in noise. You can't feel that connection if you're buried in distraction and denial. That's why the shadow work is so important. Because every part of you that you push away becomes a wall that blocks you from the mystery that wants to reach you. When you face your darkness, your envy, your resentment, your fear, and you stop pretending it's not there, you clear the static. You make room for something ancient to rise inside you. You become more honest, more humble, more real. And in that realness, you find a faith that doesn't depend on someone else telling you what to believe. It becomes something you know. Maybe you've felt it once in a while. Those moments when you're standing in nature, or watching a child sleep, or holding someone you love, and time stops. There's no anxiety, no mask. Just a sense that life is bigger than you, yet somehow it includes you completely. That's the taste of the numinous, the holy, the inexplicable. The God Jung said, you can prove with logic but feel with your whole being. So how do you live like this? How do you keep that sense alive when the world is chaotic, people disappoint you, and your old wounds keep knocking at your door? You live awake, you practice presence, you honor your dreams. You look for symbols instead of dismissing them. You have honest conversations with your shadows instead of hiding from them. You let the question, do you believe in God, become something deeper. How does the divine move through my everyday life? Jung didn't want blind believers. He wanted people who would wrestle with the mystery, who would stand in the tension of not knowing, who would trust their own soul enough to follow the signs when the world calls them crazy. Maybe that's the real invitation here. Stop searching for the divine, as if it lives somewhere you have to travel to find. Start seeing your life as the cathedral it already is. Your heartbreaks, your dreams, your symbols, your shadows, all of it is holy ground. And when you live like this, you stop needing to argue about what you believe. You walk through life with quiet certainty. I know, not because someone told you to, but because your own life became the evidence. So today, I want you to take this with you. The greatest question you ever answer is not whether God exists, but whether you're willing to meet the divine in yourself. Whether you're brave enough to look inside when the world tries to keep you distracted. Whether you trust your soul enough to listen when it whispers. Pause for a moment. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, where is the divine showing up for me right now? Maybe it's in a pain you're finally ready to heal. Maybe it's in a symbol that won't stop appearing. Maybe it's in a quiet, knowing that you're not alone. Not now. Not ever. If this video opened something in your spirit today, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Share it with someone who needs to remember that their life is more than survival. It's a conversation with something greater. And before you go, take one more moment to join this circle of souls. Drop a comment below and answer this question honestly. Do you believe in God? Or maybe, do you know?